Hi friends, welcome to my page. My name is Miss Pietrowski and I love reading. I love reading children's books. I love reading chapter books. I love reading storybooks. So I am here to start a chapter book with all of you. I love the story Superfudge by Judy Blume. Now it is a chapter book, which means there's no pictures, and it's all about listening. So if you love listening to a good story, you can find a spot in your house, get cozy, get comfortable, and we're going to jump right into this story. What I like to do when I read a story is make predictions and kind of talk to myself while I'm reading. So we're going to start off with chapter 1 today, and I have a question for you to think about while you are listening to chapter 1, so that way when the end of the story the end of the chapter comes, you can answer that question, okay? So we're going to start with chapter 1 today in the story Superfudge. Now, before we get started, it's important to make a prediction. Set a purpose for reading. Why are you reading this story? Why do you think the author wrote this story? What are you going to get out of reading this story? So on the cover of Superfudge, you see a person's leg and you see some hands on a bike, and we can make a prediction. Now, I've read this story multiple times, so it wouldn't be fair for me to make a prediction. But if you are listening along, why don't you make a prediction before we get started today? All right, so hopefully you said, I predict this story will be about, and made a short prediction. Now, as we're reading, I want you to get your head stuck on the question for chapter 1. The question for chapter 1 is, what conflict was Peter facing? Conflict. That's a big word. What is a conflict? A conflict is something where people might not agree. They might be arguing. They might not feel the same way. And they might kind of get into a little bit of a discussion about what is going on. Okay? So chapter 1 is called Guess What, Peter? I'm going to begin reading. Life was going along okay when my mother and father dropped the news. Bam! Just like that. We have something wonderful to tell you, Peter, Mom said before dinner. She was slicing carrots into the salad bowl. I grabbed one. What is it? I asked. I figured maybe my father's been made president of the company, or maybe my teacher phoned saying that even though I don't get the best grades in 5th grade, I'm definitely the smartest kid in the class. We're going to have a baby, Mom said. We're going to what? I asked, starting to choke. Dad had to whack me on the back. Tiny pieces of chewed up carrot, flew out of my mouth and hit the counter. Mom wiped them up with the sponge. Have a baby, Dad said. You mean you're pregnant? I asked Mom. That's right. She patted her middle. Almost 4 months. 4 months? You've known for 4 months and you didn't tell me? Well, we wanted to be sure, Dad said. It took you 4 months to be sure? I saw the doctor for the second time today, Mom said. The baby's due in February. She reached over and she tried to tousle my hair. I ducked and got out of the way before she could touch me. Dad took the lid off the pot on the stove and stirred up the stew. Mom went back to slicing carrots. You'd have thought we were discussing the weather. How could you? I shouted. How could you? Isn't one enough? They both stopped and looked at me. I kept right on shouting. Another fudge? Just what this family needs. I turned and I stormed down the hall. Fudge, my 4-year-old brother, was in the living room. He was shoving crackers into his mouth and laughing like a loon at Sesame Street on TV. I looked at him. And I thought about having to go through it all over again. The kicking and the screaming and the messes and more, much more. I felt so angry I kicked the wall. Fudge turned. Hi, Pita, he said. You're the biggest pain ever invented, I yelled. He tossed a handful of crackers at me. I raced to my room and slammed the door so hard my map of the world fell off the wall and landed on my bed. My dog Turtle barked. I opened the door just enough to let him squeeze through, and then I slammed it shut again. I pulled my Adidas bag out of the closet and emptied 2 dresser drawers into it. Another fudge? I said to myself. They're going to have another fudge? There was a knock at my door, and Dad called. Peter, go away, I told him. I'd like to talk to you, he said. About what? As if I didn't know. The baby. What baby? You know what baby. We don't need another baby. Need it or not, it's coming, Dad said, so you might as well get used to the idea. Never! Well, we'll talk about it later, Dad said. In the meantime, scrub up, it's time for dinner. I'm not hungry. I zipped up my bag, I grabbed a jacket, and opened my bedroom door. No one was there. I marched down the hall and I found my parents in the kitchen. I'm leaving, I announced. I'm not going to hang around waiting for another fudge to get born. Goodbye. I didn't move. I just stood there, waiting to see what they'd do next. Well, where are you going? Mom asked. She took 4 plates out of the cabinet and handed them to Dad. To Jimmy Fargo's, I said, although until that moment I hadn't really thought about where I was going to go. They have a 1-bedroom apartment, Mom said. You would be very crowded. Then I'll go to Grandma's. She'll be happy to have me. Grandma's in Boston for the week visiting Aunt Linda. Oh, so why don't you scrub up and have dinner, and then you can decide where you want to go. I didn't want to admit that I was hungry, but I was. And all those good smells coming from the pots and pans on the stove were making my mouth water. So I dropped my Adidas bag and went down the hall to the bathroom. Fudge was at the sink. He stood on his stool, lathering his hands with 3 inches of suds. Hello, you must be Bert, he said in his best Sesame Street voice. My name is Ernie. Glad to meet you. He offered me one of his sudsy little hands. Roll up your sleeves, I told him. You're making a mess. Mess, mess, I love to make a mess, he sang. We know, I told him. I ran my hands under the faucet and dried them on my jeans. When we got to the table, Fudge arranged himself in his chair. Since he refuses to sit in his booster seat, he has to kneel so that he can reach his place at the table. Pizza didn't scrub, he said. He only rinsed. You little, I started to say, but Fudge was already yapping away to my father. Hello, I'm Bert. You must be Ernie. That's right, my father said, playing along with him. How are you, Bert? Well, I'll tell you, Fudge said. My liver's turning green and my toenails are falling off. Sorry to hear that, Bert, my father said. Maybe tomorrow will be a better day. Yes, maybe, Fudge said. I shook my head and I piled some mashed potatoes on my plate. Then I drowned them in gravy. Remember when we took Fudge to Hamburger Heaven, I said, and he smeared the mashed potatoes all over the wall? I did that? Fudge asked, suddenly interested. Yes, I told him, and you dumped a plate of peas on your head, too. My mother started to laugh. I'd forgotten all about that day. Too bad you didn't remember before you decided to have another baby, I said. Baby? Fudge asked. My mother and father looked at each other. I got the message. They hadn't told Fudge the good news yet. Yes, Mom said. We're going to have a baby. Tomorrow? Fudge asked. No, not tomorrow, Mom said. When? Fudge asked. February, Dad said. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, Fudge recited. Okay, I said. We all know how smart you are. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Enough, I said. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, R, B, Y, Z. Will somebody turn him off? I said. Fudge was quiet for a few minutes. Then he said, what kind of new baby will it be? Let's hope it's not like you, I said. Why not? I was a good baby, wasn't I, Mommy? You were an interesting baby, Fudgy, Mom said. See, I was an interesting baby, he said to me. And Peter? Peter was a sweet boy, Mom said. He was very quiet. Lucky you had me first, I said to Mom, or you might not have had any more kids. Was I a quiet baby too? Fudge asked. I wouldn't say that, Dad said. I want to see the baby, Fudge said. You will. Now! You can't see it now, Dad said. Why not? Fudge asked. Because it's inside of me, Mom told him. Here it comes. I thought, the big question. when I asked that I got a book called How Babies Are Made. I wonder what Mom and Dad would say to Fudge. But Fudge didn't ask. Instead, he banged his spoon against his plate and howled, "I want to see the baby! I want to see the baby now!" "You'll have to wait until February," Dad said, "just like the rest of us." "Now, now, now, now!" Fudge screamed. Another 5 years of this, I thought. Maybe even more. And who's to say they aren't going to keep on having babies, one after the other? "Excuse me," I said, getting up from the table. I went into the kitchen and I grabbed my Adidas bag. Then I stood in the doorway and I called, "Well, I'll be on my way." I sort of waved goodbye. "Where is Pizza going?" Fudge asked. "I'm running away," I told him, "but I'll come back to visit someday." "No, Pizza, don't go." Fudge jumped off his chair and ran to me. He grabbed my leg and he started bawling. "Pizza, Pizza, take me with you." I tried to shake him off my leg, but I couldn't. He can really be strong. I looked at my mother and father. Then I looked down at Fudge, who gave me the same look as Turtle when he's begging for a biscuit. "If only I knew for sure what the baby would be like," I said. "Oh, take a chance, Peter," Dad said. "The baby won't necessarily be anything like Fudge." "But it won't not necessarily be like him either," I answered. Fudge tugged at my leg. "I want an interesting baby," he said, "like me." I sighed. "If you think it's going to sleep in my room, you're crazy," I told Mom and Dad. "The baby will sleep in here," Mom said, "in the dining area." "Then where will we eat?" "Oh, we'll think of something," Mom said. I put my Adidas bag down and I tried shaking Fudge off one more time. "Okay," I said, "I'll stay for now. But when the baby comes, if I don't like it, I'm leaving." "Me too," Fudge said. "Sam got a new baby and it smells." He held his nose. "P.U." "Who wants dessert?" Dad asked. "It's a vanilla pudding." I do," Fudge yelled. He let go of me and climbed into his chair. "Peter," Dad said. "Sure, why not?" And I sat down at the table too. Mom reached over and tousled my hair, and this time I let her. And that brings us to the end of Chapter 1. So lots of information in Chapter 1. We found out some characters, so think about those characters. We have Peter, we have Fudge, we have Mom and Dad, and then we just found out that there's a new baby coming, right? And our characters are very interesting. We have Peter, who seems to be a little bit on the older side, kind of bothered by his little brother, and Fudge is the baby, and he still talks like a baby and acts like a baby. And then there's a conflict. Conflict is that word we talked about in the beginning of this video, right? What is a conflict? It's an issue, it's an argument, it's a disagreement, it's some type of problem, right? So the question at the beginning was, what conflict was Peter facing? I hope you thought about it in your head. Take a second if you want to shout it out now. What was the conflict? Well, the conflict of the story was that now Peter has a new baby coming to the family, and Peter is not really happy about it. We know he's not happy about it because he decided to pack his bag and said he was going to leave, right? So let's see how this story unfolds. I will see you again for Chapter 2. Thanks for listening.